The first punch landed before the bell even rang. A sharp crack of knuckles against bone that sent Jasmine Carter's books flying across the hallway. Lexi Reynolds smirked as the entire school froze to watch, her designer sneaker crushing Jasmine's notebook underfoot. "Oops," she purred, her blue eyes glinting with cruel amusement. "Didn't see you there, scholarship reject." But when Jasmine finally looked up, something unexpected flashed in her eyes. Not fear, but cold, calculated fury. What Lexi didn't know: Jasmine's phone was already recording, and her police chief father had a very special way of handling bullies. From which country are you enjoying this story? Tell us in the comments, because something will happen next that you would have never imagined. This is just the beginning of an epic revenge story you won't want to miss. Hit subscribe now. Trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. The bell rang, cutting through the chatter of students shuffling through the halls of Ridgewood High. For most, it was just another Monday. But for Jasmine Carter, it was the beginning of something she hadn't expected. Something ugly. She adjusted the strap of her backpack, her fingers brushing against the small keychain her little brother had given her before she left the house that morning. "For good luck," he had said with a grin. She smiled at the memory, but it faded fast as she turned the corner and felt the weight of stairs pressing against her. Whispers slithered through the air around her. "Look at her. Who does she think she is? Bet she's one of those activist types." Jasmine kept her eyes forward, her step steady. She was used to being the new girl. Her dad's job as police chief meant they moved more often than most families. New schools, new faces, new challenges. She could handle it. Or at least, that's what she told herself. Then, a shoulder collided with hers. Hard. Her book slipped from her grip, hitting the floor with a loud slap. The hallway noise dimmed for a second, as if everyone had paused to watch. Jasmine looked up. Lexi Reynolds stood over her, a smirk curling the edges of her lips. Lexi was the kind of girl who ruled Ridgewood without even trying. Cheer captain. Student council president. The girl everyone wanted to be. Or at least, the girl everyone pretended to like. "Oops," Lexi said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Didn't see you there." A few of her friends giggled. Jasmine exhaled slowly, then bent down to pick up her books. But before her fingers could brush the pages, Lexi's foot came down, crushing the spine of her notebook under the heel of her pristine white sneaker. The sound of tearing paper made Jasmine's stomach twist. Lexi tilted her head. "Oh no! Was that important?" Jasmine's jaw tightened. She could feel the heat crawling up her neck, but she refused to let it show. Instead, she straightened, meeting Lexi's gaze dead-on. For a second, something flickered in Lexi's eyes. Surprise? Annoyance? Jasmine didn't wait to find out. She reached down, gripped the edge of her notebook, and yanked it free from under Lexi's shoe. The page ripped further, but she didn't react. She just shoved it into her backpack and walked away. The whispers followed her. By lunch, the whispers had turned into something louder. Jasmine sat alone at a table near the back of the cafeteria, picking at her food. She wasn't hungry, but she refused to hide. If she skipped lunch, they'd think they won. And she wasn't about to give them that. A tray clattered onto the table across from her. She looked up. A boy with messy brown hair and paint-stained fingers slid into the seat. He didn't say anything at first, just started eating like it was completely normal to sit with a stranger. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. He glanced at her, then shrugged. Table was empty. She almost smiled. Almost. "Miguel," he said after a minute. "Jasmine." He nodded, then went back to his food. A comfortable silence settled between them. Then, a shadow fell over the table. Jasmine didn't have to look up to know who it was. "Well, well," Lexi's voice rang out. "Looks like the new girl found herself a little friend." Miguel stiffened but didn't respond. Lexi leaned down, bracing her hands on the table. "You should be careful who you associate with, Jasmine. People might get the wrong idea about you." Jasmine set her fork down slowly. "What idea would that be?" Lexi's smile was sharp. "That you're desperate." The cafeteria had gone quiet. Everyone was watching. Jasmine held Lexi's gaze. "I'm not the one going out of my way to talk to someone I don't like." Lexi's smirk faltered. Then, without another word, Jasmine stood, grabbed her tray, and walked away. Miguel followed. The rest of the day passed in a blur of sideways glances and muttered comments. Jasmine ignored them all. But when she got to her locker at the end of the day, she froze. The door was slightly ajar. She hesitated, then pulled it open. Her stomach dropped. Everything inside was destroyed. Her textbooks had been ripped apart, pages shredded. The photo of her family she kept taped inside was gone. And in its place, scrawled in red marker across the metal, was one word: leave. Jasmine's hands shook. She slammed the locker shut. Then she pulled out her phone and dialed the one person she knew could make it stop. Her dad picked up on the second ring. "Hey, superstar," he said, his voice warm. "How was your day?" Jasmine swallowed hard. "Dad," she whispered, "I need your help." The phone call lasted less than a minute. Jasmine kept her voice low, her words clipped. She didn't cry. She wouldn't give the hallway spectators that satisfaction. But when she hung up, her hands still hadn't stopped shaking. Miguel appeared at her side, his eyes widening as he took in the vandalized locker. "Jesus," he muttered. He reached out like he might touch her shoulder, then seemed to think better of it. "You okay?" Jasmine didn't answer. She was too busy counting the cracks in the ceiling tiles, focusing on anything but the heat building behind her eyes. The final bell rang, signaling the end of school. Normally the halls would erupt with noise, backpacks zipping, locker doors slamming, friends laughing. But now there was only silence. Everyone was watching, waiting. Lexi's voice cut through the quiet. "Problem, new girl?" Jasmine turned slowly. Lexi leaned against the bank of lockers, surrounded by her usual entourage. One of them held up a phone, recording. Miguel stepped forward. "Back off, Lexi." Lexi's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Ah, how cute. The art freak thinks he's a hero." Her gaze slid back to Jasmine. "You should really teach your dog to stay out of other people's conversations." Jasmine felt something inside her snap. She took one step forward, then another. The crowd parted like she was radioactive. When she stopped inches from Lexi's face, she could see the faint smear of lip gloss on the other girl's teeth. "You want me to leave?" Jasmine's voice was barely above a whisper. "Make me." For the first time all day, Lexi looked uncertain. Then the front doors of the school burst open. 3 police officers strode down the hallway, their boots echoing against the linoleum. At their head walked a broad-shouldered man with salt and pepper hair and a face that could have been carved from stone. Chief Marcus Carter's gaze swept the hallway before landing on his daughter. "Jasmine!" Every head swiveled toward her. Lexi paled. "Wait, that's... Dad!" Jasmine didn't break eye contact with Lexi as she spoke. "This is Lexi Reynolds. She's been helping me adjust to my new school." The chief's expression darkened as he took in the vandalized locker, the torn books at Jasmine's feet. He turned to the nearest teacher, a frazzled-looking man in a wrinkled button-down. "You allow this kind of behavior at your school?" The teacher stammered. I didn't. Chief Carter." The principal came hurrying down the hall, her heels clicking frantically. "What a surprise! If we'd known you were visiting, you'd have what?" The chief's voice could have frozen lava. "Cleaned up the evidence?" The principal's smile faltered. Lexi found her voice. "This is all just a misunderstanding. Right, Jasmine?" Her eyes pleaded in a way that would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. Jasmine looked at her father. Really looked at him. Saw the way his jaw clenched when he was trying to stay calm. The way his fingers flexed at his sides. She'd seen that look exactly 3 times before. When Mom got sick, when Grandpa died, and when that rookie cop got shot during the bank robbery last year. She made her decision. "Actually," Jasmine said, pulling her phone from her pocket, "I think Officer Gutierrez might want to see these texts. And the video from 3rd period. And the photos someone posted on Ridgewood Confessions last night." Lexi's face went sheet white. "You can't." "Can't what?" Jasmine tilted her head. "Defend myself?" The chief took the phone, his expression growing stormier with each swipe. When he looked up, even the principal took a step back. "Principal Cole," he said in a voice that promised hell, "I believe we need to have a conversation. With Lexi and her parents. As the officers led a spluttering Lexi away, Miguel let out a low whistle. Damn! Jasmine finally let herself breathe. But as she watched Lexi disappear around the corner, she knew one thing for certain. This wasn't over. Not even close. The police station smelled like burnt coffee and stale donuts. Jasmine sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair outside her father's office, picking at a loose thread on her jeans. Every few minutes, someone would walk by and do a double take. She could practically see the gears turning in their heads. That's the chief's kid, the one who got bullied. She hated it. The door to her father's office swung open. A red-faced Mr. Reynolds stormed out, his expensive suit jacket wrinkled like he'd been gripping it too tight. He didn't even glance at Jasmine as he marched down the hall. Lexi emerged next, her carefully styled hair now a mess, her makeup streaked. When she saw Jasmine, her face twisted into something ugly. "This isn't fair," she hissed. Jasmine just looked at her. Lexi opened her mouth to say something else, but her mother appeared behind her, gripping her elbow. "Not another word," Mrs. Reynolds muttered, dragging her daughter toward the exit. Chief Carter stood in the doorway, watching them go. When the elevator doors closed, he sighed and rubbed his temples. "Come on, superstar," he said, jerking his head toward his office. "Let's talk." The office was small but neat, the walls covered in framed commendations and family photos. Jasmine sank into the chair across from his desk while he poured himself a glass of water. "You should have told me sooner," he said without turning around. Jasmine picked at her thumbnail. "I handled it. By letting them destroy your things? By not giving them what they wanted." She met his gaze. "If I'd come crying to you on day one, it would have just made things worse." The chief sat heavily in his chair. "So what changed today?" Jasmine thought about the words scrawled on her locker. The way Lexi's friends had laughed when her books hit the floor. The way no teacher had stepped in. Not once. "They crossed a line," she said simply. Her father studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "The school's suspending Lexi for 2 weeks. Mandatory counseling. And if she so much as looks at you funny when she gets back, she's expelled." Jasmine blinked. "That's it. What did you expect?" "I don't know." She slumped in her chair. "More, I guess." The chief sighed. "Welcome to the real world, kid. Sometimes the bad guys get a slap on the wrist." Jasmine thought about the fear in Lexi's eyes when the cops showed up. The way her perfect life had unraveled in seconds. "Maybe," she said. "But now she knows what happens when you push too far." Her father's mouth quirked. "That's my girl." The next morning, Jasmine braced herself as she walked into school. She expected whispers, stares, maybe even more vandalism. What she didn't expect was the silence. The hallway parted for her like she was royalty. People who'd laughed at her yesterday now refused to meet her eyes. Even the teachers gave her a wide berth. Miguel fell into step beside her. "You're famous." Jasmine rolled her eyes. "I'm radioactive." "Nah." He grinned. "You're the girl who took down Lexi Reynolds. That makes you a legend." She snorted. But as they turned the corner, she froze. A crowd had gathered around her locker. Her stomach dropped. Not again. But when she pushed through, what she saw made her breath catch. Someone had painted over the vandalism. Not just covered it up, transformed it. Where the word leave had been, there was now a soaring phoenix, its wings spread wide, rising from flames. Beneath it, in careful script, were the words, "Still here." Jasmine reached out, tracing the edge of a wing. The paint was still slightly tacky. She turned to Miguel. "Did you?" He shook his head, eyes wide. "Wasn't me." Then Jasmine noticed the small sticky note tucked in the corner of the locker door. She peeled it off. "Sometimes the quiet ones are watching too," it read. "Welcome to Ridgewood." Jasmine looked around at the sea of unfamiliar faces. For the first time since she'd arrived, she wondered how many of them had been in her shoes before. How many had suffered under Lexi's reign and said nothing? Maybe she wasn't as alone as she thought. Miguel bumped her shoulder. "Come on, badass. We're gonna be late." Jasmine took one last look at the mural, then slammed her locker shut with a satisfying clang. Still here. And she wasn't going anywhere. The mural on Jasmine's locker changed everything. For the first week after Lexi's suspension, the school held its breath.
Teachers watched Jasmine with wary eyes, as if expecting her to snap.
Students whispered behind her back, but now the tone was different. Less mocking, more curious. And every morning, she found small notes tucked into her locker. Some were anonymous messages of support. Others were confessions from kids who'd been bullied by Lexi for years. Jasmine kept them all in an old shoebox under her bed. Miguel became her shadow, walking her to classes and eating lunch with her every day. At first, she thought it was pity. Then one afternoon, while they were working on an art project in the back of the library, he finally told her the truth. "Lexi got my last partner kicked out," he said, not looking up from his sketch. Jasmine paused, her pencil hovering over her notebook. What? Sophomore year. Her name was Aisha. Miguel's jaw tightened. Lexi accused her of stealing some stupid bracelet. The school didn't even investigate, just called her parents and suggested she transfer for her own good. Jasmine's stomach twisted. That's fucked up. Miguel finally met her eyes. Yeah. Welcome to Ridgewood. She thought about the notes in her shoebox. The phoenix on her locker. All this time, she'd thought she was alone. But the truth was, Lexi had left a trail of victims long before Jasmine arrived. The second week, the texts started. Unknown number. Asterisk, you think you won? This isn't over. Asterisk. Jasmine deleted it and blocked the number. Then another came. And another. Unknown number 2. Your dad can't protect you forever. Unknown number 3. We know where you live. She showed them to her father that night over dinner. His fork clattered against his plate. I'll handle it, he said in a voice that promised violence. Jasmine shook her head. No. That's what they want. Her father studied her for a long moment. Since when did you get so smart? Since I realized bullies are all the same, she said quietly. Whether they're in school or on the streets. The chief sighed, rubbing his temples. I don't like this. I know. Jasmine pushed her peas around her plate. But I need to fight my own battles. The next morning, Jasmine walked into school with her head high. She ignored the whispers, the stares. When she reached her locker, a group of freshmen scattered like startled birds. The Phoenix mural had been defaced. Black spray paint slashed across the vibrant colors, obscuring the wings. The words "still here" had been crossed out, replaced with a single dripping threat: run. Jasmine's hands curled into fists. Then she heard the laughter. Lexi's friends lounged against the lockers down the hall, their phones out, recording her reaction. At the center of the group stood a girl Jasmine didn't recognize. Tall, with icy blonde hair and a smirk that made Lexi look amateur. Miguel materialized at her side. That's Haley, he muttered. Lexi's cousin. She goes to St. Mary's. Jasmine's eyes narrowed. So why's she here? Because Lexi can't be. Haley's gaze locked onto Jasmine like a predator sighting prey. She sauntered forward, her designer boots clicking against the linoleum. Wow, Haley drawled, examining the vandalized mural. Someone really doesn't like you. Jasmine didn't blink. I'm heartbroken. Haley's smile faded. Cute. She leaned in, her perfume cloying. Here's the thing, new girl. Lexi might be suspended, but we look out for our own. Is that a threat? It's a fact. Haley's eyes glittered. Sleep with one eye open. Then she was gone, her entourage trailing behind her like obedient little shadows. Miguel exhaled sharply. We need to tell someone. Jasmine stared at the ruined mural, at the word run staring back at her like a dare. No, she said softly. We don't. Because she finally understood. Lexi had power, sure. But power was just fear in a pretty package. And Jasmine? She wasn't afraid anymore. That afternoon, Jasmine stayed late after school. The halls were empty, the classrooms dark. Perfect. She knelt in front of her locker, pulling out a set of acrylic paints from her backpack. 4 hours, she worked in silence, her brush strokes sure and steady. When she finally stepped back, her arms ached, her jeans were splattered with color, And the mural? The mural was alive again. The phoenix now rose from ashes, its wings spanning the entire locker door. Beneath it, in bold black letters, Jasmine had painted a new message. Try harder. She snapped a photo and sent it to the unknown numbers with a single caption. Looking forward to it. Then she packed up her paints and walked away, the echo of her footsteps the only sound in the empty hall. Let them come. She was ready. The morning after Jasmine repainted her locker, the school buzzed with tension thicker than the late autumn fog clinging to Ridgewood's football field. Students clustered in tight groups, their whispers cutting off abruptly whenever teachers passed by. The air smelled of cheap disinfectant and nervous sweat. Jasmine walked through the front doors with her backpack slung over one shoulder, her expression carefully neutral. She'd slept maybe 3 hours total, her mind racing through every possible scenario of how today might go down. The paint stains under her fingernails itched. Miguel was waiting by her locker, his usual messy hair even wilder than normal, like he'd been running his hands through it all morning. His eyes widened when he saw her. You actually did it. She shrugged, popping open the locker to grab her history textbook. The fresh paint gleamed under the fluorescent lights, the phoenix's golden wings seeming to ripple as the locker door moved. Told you I would. Yeah, but... Miguel glanced down the hallway where Haley and her crew usually gathered. You basically just slapped a target on your back. Jasmine slammed the locker shut with more force than necessary. There was already a target. At least now I'm holding the gun. The first period bell rang, cutting off whatever Miguel was about to say. As they headed to class, Jasmine noticed 3 things in quick succession. 1. The way underclassmen suddenly found reasons to walk in the opposite direction when they saw her coming. 2. The football players who usually took up the entire hallway actually moved aside to let her pass. 3. The security cameras in the ceiling corners, usually just for show, had tiny red lights blinking steadily. Someone was watching. Mr. Henderson's history class was already half full when they arrived. Conversations died as Jasmine walked in. She took her usual seat in the back, ignoring the stares boring into her shoulder blades. Miguel slid into the desk beside hers. This is weird, right? Like, weirder than usual. Before Jasmine could respond, the classroom door banged open. Haley stormed in, her face flushed, her phone clutched so tight her knuckles were white. She didn't even glance at Jasmine, just marched straight to Mr. Henderson's desk. I need to go to the office, she announced, voice trembling with barely contained rage. Mr. Henderson barely looked up from his attendance sheet. Do you have a pass? Haley's jaw worked. No, but... Then sit down. The entire class held its breath. Haley never got told no. Haley never even got tardy slips. For one glorious second, Jasmine thought Haley might actually explode. Then the girl spun on her heel and stomped to an empty desk, slamming her books down hard enough to make the water bottle on Jasmine's desk tremble. Miguel leaned over, whispering, What the hell did you do? Jasmine kept her eyes on her notebook where she was doodling an elaborate sketch of the phoenix from her locker. Nothing, which was technically true. She hadn't done anything, but her father certainly had. The text started during second period. Unknown number. You bitch. Unknown number. You're dead. Unknown number. My parents are getting a lawyer. Jasmine silenced her phone without responding. Whatever was happening, it was working. At lunch, the cafeteria felt like a war zone. Haley's usual table was empty except for a single freshman who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. The football team kept glancing between Jasmine's table and the principal's office, their expressions unreadable. Miguel stabbed at his mystery meat with more force than necessary. Okay, seriously. Spill. Jasmine took a slow sip of chocolate milk. Remember how I said I wasn't going to tell my dad about the texts? Miguel's fork froze mid-air. You lied. Not exactly. She set the milk carton down carefully. I just may have left my phone unlocked on the kitchen counter last night, with all the messages visible. Miguel's eyes widened. Holy shit. Yeah. Jasmine finally allowed herself a small smile. Turns out cyberbullying is a felony in this state when it involves threats of violence, especially when those threats are sent to the police chief's daughter. The realization dawned on Miguel's face. Haley's parents got called in. Among others. Jasmine glanced toward the principal's office where shadows moved behind the frosted glass. My dad mentioned something about subpoenaing phone records to track down all the numbers. Miguel let out a low whistle. Nuclear option. Jasmine shrugged. They shouldn't have brought my family into it. The bell rang, cutting off whatever Miguel was about to say. As they stood to clear their trays, the cafeteria doors burst open. Haley stood framed in the doorway, her eyes red-rimmed, her usually perfect hair in disarray. Behind her, two stone-faced administrators waited. When Haley's gaze locked onto Jasmine, the hatred in her eyes could have melted steel. "This isn't over," she spat, loud enough for the entire cafeteria to hear. Jasmine just smiled, looking forward to it. Then the administrators led Haley away, and the whispers started in earnest. By afternoon, the rumors had spiraled out of control. Some said Haley was expelled. Others claimed her parents were suing the school. The most outlandish story involved Jasmine's dad arresting Haley's entire family at gunpoint. Jasmine ignored them all, focusing instead on the steady stream of notes appearing in her locker between classes. Most were variations of "thank you" or "be careful." One slipped to her during chemistry, simply read, "Lexi comes back tomorrow." Miguel saw it too. His face darkened. "You ready for round two?" Jasmine thought about the phoenix on her locker, about the shoebox full of notes under her bed, about the way the entire school seemed to be holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. She tucked the note into her pocket. Let her come. The rain started just before dawn, a steady drumbeat against Jasmine's bedroom window that matched the rhythm of her restless thoughts. She'd been awake since 4:17 a.m. according to the glowing red numbers on her alarm clock, watching shadows stretch across her ceiling as the storm rolled in. Today was the day Lexi returned. Jasmine rolled onto her side, staring at the shoebox peeking out from under her bed. She'd read through every note again last night, tracing the shaky handwriting of kids who'd been too afraid to speak up before. There were 27 in total. 27 stories of locker vandalism, stolen homework, cruel rumors spread like wildfire. 27 reasons why she couldn't back down now. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. "Miguel, you alive?" Jasmine smiled faintly and typed back. Asterisk barely. "Meet you at the usual spot." Asterisk. She dressed carefully. Dark jeans, combat boots, a navy blue sweater that brought out the gold flecks in her eyes. The outfit said, "I'm not trying," which was the exact opposite of the truth. Every detail mattered today. Downstairs, her father was already in full uniform, sipping black coffee at the kitchen counter. The circles under his eyes matched hers. "You sure you don't want me to drive you?" he asked for the third time that morning. Jasmine grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl. "I'm sure." The chief set his mug down with a clink. "Jasmine, I need to do this myself." She met his gaze steadily. "But thank you." For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Two stubborn Carter souls who never knew when to quit. Then her father sighed and reached into his breast pocket, pulling out a small black device. "Take this." Jasmine frowned at the tiny button-shaped object. "A panic button? Just press it if..." He trailed off, jaw working. "Just take it, okay?" She pocketed it without argument. Some battles weren't worth fighting. The walk to school felt longer than usual, the rain soaking through Jasmine's jacket by the time she reached the student parking lot. Miguel waited under the awning near the art wing, his hood pulled up against the drizzle. "You look like you're going to war," he observed as she approached. Jasmine wiped rain from her face. "Untill." They stood in silence for a moment, watching through the downpour as cars pulled into the lot one by one. Then Miguel stiffened. There. A sleek silver BMW slid into Lexi's reserved parking spot. The driver's door opened, and out stepped Mr. Reynolds in his usual tailored suit, holding an umbrella aloft. The passenger door opened more slowly, revealing long legs and designer jeans, then a perfectly styled blonde head. Lexi looked thinner than Jasmine remembered, her cheekbones sharper under the harsh parking lot lights. But when she turned toward the school, her eyes were the same icy blue, and they locked onto Jasmine immediately. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to that single moment. Lexi's lips curling into something that wasn't quite a smile, the way her father's grip tightened on the umbrella handle, the faint tremor in Miguel's breathing beside her. Then the moment broke as Lexi turned away, saying something to her father that made him laugh as they walked toward the principal's office. Miguel exhaled sharply. Well, that was creepy. Jasmine's fingers found the panic button in her pocket. It's just the beginning. First period passed without incident. So did second. By third period chemistry, the tension in the school had reached a fever pitch. Everyone kept waiting for the explosion, the confrontation, the dramatic showdown between the queen bee and the girl who dethroned her. It never came. Lexi moved through the halls like a ghost, her usual entourage noticeably absent. She didn't speak unless called on in class. Didn't look at anyone for longer than necessary. The only sign anything was wrong was the way her perfectly manicured nails tapped incessantly against every surface. Desks, lockers, her own thighs. Jasmine watched it all with growing unease. This wasn't the Lexi she knew. This was something else. Something worse. At lunch, the cafeteria buzzed with speculation. She's scared of you now, Miguel said around a mouthful of pizza. Jasmine shook her head, eyes locked on Lexi sitting alone at what used to be the popular kids' table. No. She's planning something. As if sensing the attention, Lexi looked up. Their eyes met across the crowded cafeteria. And for the first time since her return, Lexi smiled. Slow, knowing, and full of teeth. Jasmine's stomach dropped. Then the fire alarm went off. Chaos erupted as hundreds of students scrambled to their feet, the screeching alarm drowning out shouted orders from teachers. Jasmine lost Miguel in the crush of bodies heading for the exits. The rain had turned into a downpour outside, and within seconds the quad was a sea of umbrellas and hoodies as students huddled under any available cover. Jasmine scanned the crowd for Lexi but couldn't spot her blonde head anywhere. A hand grabbed her elbow. Come on. Miguel appeared at her side, hair plastered to his forehead. We need to. A scream cut him off. Near the art wing, a group of students had backed away from something, their faces pale even in the gray morning light. Jasmine pushed through the crowd, Miguel close behind, until she saw what had caused the commotion. Someone had spray-painted the side of the school in jagged red letters. Burn. Bitch. And beneath it, lying in a puddle of rainwater, was a charred piece of fabric that Jasmine recognized instantly. The remains of her Phoenix mural, carefully peeled from her locker and set ablaze. Miguel sucked in a sharp breath. Jesus! Jasmine's hands curled into fists at her sides. Around her, whispers spread like wildfire as more students noticed the vandalism, the destruction, the unmistakable threat. Then, from somewhere behind her, a voice rang out clear as a bell. Looks like someone finally put that trash where it belongs. Jasmine turned slowly. Lexi stood at the edge of the crowd, her designer raincoat perfectly dry, her smile razor-sharp. Around her, the students who'd once followed her like disciples had begun to gather again, their confidence returning with their leader back in place. For the first time since this began, real fear curled in Jasmine's gut. This wasn't just bullying anymore. This was war. The rain turned the burned remnants of Jasmine's mural into a soggy mess by the time administrators herded students back inside. Teachers whispered in tight clusters while security guards roamed the halls with unusual vigilance. The sharp scent of wet charcoal clung to the air. Jasmine stood at her defaced locker, running fingers over the jagged edges where her Phoenix had been peeled away. The metal beneath was scratched and dented. Someone had used serious tools to remove it. Miguel shifted beside her. They're saying it was a prank. Faulty wiring in the art wing. Bullshit, Jasmine muttered. She could still see Lexi's smirk burned against her eyelids. A shadow fell across them. Vice Principal Greeley cleared his throat, his tie slightly askew from the chaos. Jasmine, my office, please. The walk through the crowded hallway felt like moving through a dream. Students pressed against lockers to let them pass, their whispers following like a wake. They're gonna expel her. Heard Chief Carter threatened to arrest. Lexi's dad donated a new computer lab last year. Greeley's office smelled like stale coffee and industrial cleaner. Seated across from his cluttered desk were Lexi and her father, both looking infuriatingly composed. Mr. Reynolds even stood to shake Greeley's hand like this was some business meeting. Ah, Jasmine. Greeley forced a smile. Have a seat. She remained standing. I'd rather not. Mr. Reynolds' eyebrow twitched. Lexi examined her manicure. Greeley sighed. We're trying to resolve this unfortunate situation. He gestured to the security monitor on his desk, showing a grainy still of the vandalism. The fire department confirmed it was just spray paint, no actual fire risk. Jasmine stared at him. Someone destroyed school property, made violent threats. Allegedly, Mr. Reynolds cut in smoothly. No one actually saw who did it. Lexi's smile was poison wrapped in silk. Jasmine's fingers brushed the panic button in her pocket. There are cameras by the art wing. Unfortunately not functioning this morning, Greeley said too quickly. Technical issues. Of course. Jasmine almost laughed. The system just happened to fail the one time someone targeted her explicitly. How convenient. Mr. Reynolds leaned forward. Let's be reasonable. These childish pranks have gotten out of hand. My daughter has suffered enough. 2-week suspension, mandatory counseling. His gaze hardened. Meanwhile, Jasmine seems to thrive on the drama. The accusation hung in the air. Greeley wouldn't meet her eyes. Jasmine unclenched her jaw. Is that why you called me here? To blame me for being harassed? No one's blaming. Because if that's the case, she continued, voice steady despite the fire in her veins, my father will be fascinated to hear how Ridgewood High handles Title IX violations. The room went very still. Even Lexi looked up. Greeley paled. Now, Jasmine, let's not. Sex-based harassment includes gender stereotypes, she recited, remembering the exact phrasing from the DOE pamphlets her dad kept in their home office. Like assuming a girl asked for it by standing up for herself. Mr. Reynolds' polished facade cracked. Are you threatening us? No. Jasmine finally took the offered seat, crossing her ankles primly. I'm explaining how a federal investigation would play out when my dad files the complaint. Subpoenas for those malfunctioning camera feeds. Depositions from every student who's left me notes about Lexi's bullying. She tilted her head. How many college donors want their names associated with that lawsuit? Lexi's manicure dug into her own thigh hard enough to leave crescents in the designer fabric. Greeley looked like he might be sick. Jasmine stood, adjusting her backpack. Unless, of course, the school takes actual steps to protect me. Like expelling students who make violent threats. Or, she added pointedly, at least giving me a new locker. She didn't wait for a response, letting the door slam behind her with satisfying finality. The text started an hour later. Unknown number. You're dead. Unknown number. No one protects you now. Unknown number. Watch your back. Jasmine saved each one, forwarding them automatically to the folder she'd labeled Evidence. Let them dig their own graves. Miguel caught up with her after school, his jacket soaked from the ongoing downpour. Well, what happened? They're giving me a locker in the junior hall. She popped open her umbrella, and installing additional surveillance. Miguel blinked. That's it. For now. Jasmine stepped into the rain, the rhythmic patter on nylon drowning out whatever he said next. Because she'd noticed what no one else had, the flicker of real fear in Lexi's eyes when she mentioned the notes. Lexi didn't know how many people had turned against her. And that uncertainty? That was leverage. The walk home took longer than usual, the streets slick with rain. Jasmine was 2 blocks from her house when a car slowed beside her. Silver BMW. Tinted windows. Her pulse spiked. The passenger window rolled down just enough to reveal Lexi's face, shadowed in the dim interior. Get in. Jasmine kept walking. Not a chance. The car crept alongside her. You really think you won? Lexi's laugh was hollow. My dad owns this town. Your little threats mean nothing. A raindrop slid down Jasmine's neck like a warning. Then why stop me? The brakes squeaked as the BMW jerked to a halt. Lexi shoved the door open, rainwater splashing her pristine white sneakers. Up close, her mascara was smudged, her breath smelling faintly of vodka. Because I'm offering you a deal, she hissed. You drop this Title IX bullshit, and I'll leave you alone. Jasmine studied her, the tremor in her hands, the 2 wide pupils. This wasn't strategy. This was desperation. No. Lexi's face twisted. You stupid. Tell me something first. Jasmine stepped closer. umbrella shielding them both. Why me? You didn't even know me before I got here. For a heartbeat, Lexi looked almost human. Then her mask slammed back down. Because you walked in like you owned the place. Like you weren't afraid. She spat the words like curses. People like you need to learn your place. Jasmine absorbed this, the pieces clicking together. All this destruction, just because Lexi sensed someone she couldn't control. She turned toward home. Enjoy your probation, Lexi. The car door slammed. Tires screeched. Jasmine didn't look back. Her father was waiting on the porch, still in uniform, his expression unreadable as she approached. "You're late," he said. Jasmine shook out her umbrella. "Had a chat with Lexi." The chief's jaw tightened. And I think," she said slowly, "we finally understand each other." Inside, the house smelled of garlic and rosemary, her dad's attempt at cooking when stressed. Jasmine dropped her soaked backpack by the door, her fingers brushing the shoebox under the console table where she'd started keeping the newest notes. Upstairs, her phone buzzed incessantly in her pocket. More threats, probably. Or maybe. She checked the screen. Unknown number. Lexi's planning something for the pep rally. Unknown number. Be careful. Jasmine smiled. Let Lexi come. She had an entire army now. The pep rally posters went up overnight, plastered across every available surface in Ridgewood High. Glossy red and black banners proclaimed asterisk, "Wildcats roar tonight." Asterisk alongside blurry action shots of the football team. Someone had drawn devil horns on the quarterback's helmet in Sharpie. Jasmine peeled a damp flyer off her new locker, located conspicuously near the principal's office, and studied the details. 7 p.m. in the gym. Mandatory attendance for all athletes and student council members. Guess who's head of the pep committee this year, Miguel muttered, appearing at her elbow with 2 coffees. He handed her one, the steam curling around his chipped black nail polish. Jasmine took a scalding sip. Let me guess. Lexi's redemption tour. Bingo. He nodded toward the end of the hall where Lexi stood surrounded by her newly reassembled court, clipboard in hand, pointing at various underclassmen like a general deploying troops. The dark circles under her eyes were barely concealed with concealer. Jasmine's phone buzzed. Another anonymous text. She got the key to the fireworks locker. Miguel peeked over her shoulder. Fireworks at an indoor rally? That's a lawsuit waiting to happen. Or a distraction. Jasmine pocketed her phone, watching as Lexi laughed a little too loudly at something a cheerleader said. The sound grated like broken glass. A hand tapped her shoulder. Freshman Emily Chan from her chemistry lab stood shifting from foot to foot, her braces catching the fluorescent light when she spoke. Jasmine. Some of us were wondering. She swallowed hard. Are you going to the rally? Jasmine considered lying. She could already picture the gleam in Lexi's eye when she realized her prey had fled the battlefield. But the hopeful look on Emily's face, and the dozen other freshmen pretending not to eavesdrop, changed her mind. Yeah, she said, louder than necessary. Wouldn't miss it. Miguel groaned. We're gonna regret this. By 6th period, the school vibrated with pre-rally chaos. Teachers gave up on actual instruction, letting students chatter about the upcoming game and halftime show. Even the usually stoic lunch ladies wore wildcat paw prints on their hairnets. Jasmine spent the hour sketching in her notebook, not the phoenix this time, but a wolf pack moving through shadows, their eyes reflecting moonlight. She didn't notice Mr. Henderson approaching until his shadow fell across the paper. Interesting artwork, he said in his dry, history teacher voice. Up close, his tie had tiny dinosaurs on it. Jasmine covered the sketch with her hand. Just doodling. Henderson adjusted his glasses. You know, back in my college days, I protested the Vietnam War. At her startled look, he almost smiled. Got arrested 3 times. My father, a Marine, didn't speak to me for a year. Jasmine blinked. Why are you telling me this? Because change requires 2 things. He held up 2 fingers. Allies in high places. 1 finger folded down. And witnesses willing to testify. The 2nd finger curled inward. You've got the first. Be sure of the 2nd before you walk into that gym tonight. The bell rang, cutting off whatever she might have said. Henderson returned to his desk like the conversation never happened. Miguel materialized beside her as the class emptied. What was that about? Jasmine carefully tore out the wolf sketch and tucked it into her bag. A warning. The gymnasium smelled of sweat and popcorn when they arrived that evening, the bleachers already packed with students. A giant papier-mâché wildcat loomed over the entrance, its glowing eyes following Jasmine as she passed beneath. "Cheery," Miguel muttered. They found seats near the top of the bleachers, close enough to see the action, far enough to avoid flying debris. The cheer squad launched into an elaborate routine below, their pom-poms flashing under the strobe lights. Lexi stood center court in a red sequin top, microphone in hand, playing the perfect MC. If you didn't know better, you'd never guess she'd been suspended 2 weeks ago for bullying. "Welcome, Wildcats." Her voice echoed through the crackling speakers. "Who's ready to?" A deafening bang cut her off. Jasmine's instincts screamed gunshot before her brain registered the colored sparks raining from the rafters. The crowd oohed and awed as more fireworks exploded. Pink, green, gold, filling the gym with acrid smoke. Miguel coughed. "Those are definitely illegal indoors." Then the screaming started. Not cheers. Real, panicked shrieks from the far bleachers. Jasmine stood, straining to see through the haze. At first, she thought it was just part of the show. Then she spotted the flames. The giant wildcat's tail was on fire. Chaos erupted. Students stampeded toward exits as the fire spread up the papier-mâché creature's back, the flames licking at the banners overhead. Teachers shouted orders no one could hear over the continuing fireworks and blaring pep music. Through the smoke, Jasmine saw Lexi still standing frozen at center court, her face illuminated in flickering orange. Not scared. Not even surprised. Calculating. Miguel grabbed Jasmine's arm. "We need to." "Wait." Her eyes locked onto movement near the scorched wildcat. A figure in a black hoodie darted behind the burning structure, something glinting in their hands. The fire alarm finally wailed to life, sprinklers activating with a hiss. As the crowd thinned, Jasmine broke free and sprinted down the bleachers, Miguel shouting after her. She reached the smoldering wildcat just as the hooded figure turned. Emily Chen stared back at her, eyes wide with terror, a silver lighter clutched in her shaking hands. "She made me," the freshman stammered, tears cutting through soot on her cheeks. "Lexi said she'd get me kicked off the Science Olympiad team if I didn't." A shadow fell across them. "Oops." Lexi's smile was all teeth as she surveyed the damage, her sequins glittering under the emergency lights. "Looks like someone got carried away with school spirit." Jasmine stepped between her and Emily. "You set this up. Prove it." Lexi's gaze flicked to the trembling freshman. "Unless you think little Emily here will lie to the police?" Emily made a choked sound. The sprinklers rained down, soaking them all as firefighters burst through the gym doors. Lexi took the opportunity to slip away, vanishing into the crowd like the smoke still curling toward the ceiling. Miguel caught up, panting. "We need to go. Now." Jasmine looked at Emily, at the ruined gym, at the flashing lights outside. Then she reached into her pocket and pressed record on her phone. "Start from the beginning," she told the crying girl. "Everything." Because Henderson was right. She had her witness. The fire truck strobe lights painted the school parking lot in pulsing red and blue as students huddled under the awning, their breath fogging in the chilly night air. Someone had passed out emergency blankets that crinkled with every movement, the metallic scent mixing with the lingering smoke clinging to their clothes. Jasmine kept Emily close, her arm around the shaking freshman's shoulders as a paramedic checked them for smoke inhalation. The girl hadn't stopped crying since they'd escaped the gym, her whispered confession still ringing in Jasmine's ears. "Lexi gave me the lighter. Said it was just a prank. She promised nothing bad would happen." Miguel stood guard nearby, his usually messy hair plastered flat from the sprinklers, eyes scanning the crowd for any sign of Lexi or her minions. "Chief's here," he muttered as flashing headlights cut through the chaos. Jasmine's father emerged from his squad car like a storm given human form, his uniform hat shielding his face from the drizzle that had started up again. The sea of students parted before him as he made his way to the command post where firefighters were giving their report. Emily whimpered. "Is he going to arrest me?" "No." Jasmine squeezed her shoulder. "But we need to tell him the truth." "The truth?" Such a simple concept. And yet, as Jasmine watched Lexi holding court near the ambulance, playing the traumatized victim for the local news crew, she realized truth was the one weapon Lexi couldn't twist to her advantage. Not this time.
Her father spotted her and cut through the crowd like a knife.
Up close, the lines around his eyes looked deeper than usual, the gray at his temples more pronounced.
"You okay?" His voice was gruff, but his hands were gentle as he checked her for burns.
Jasmine nodded. "We need to talk. Privately."
The chief's gaze flicked to Emily, then Miguel, then back to her face.
He exhaled through his nose. "My car. Now." The squad car's interior smelled of coffee and gun oil, the dashboard lights casting eerie green shadows across their faces. Emily sat sandwiched between Jasmine and Miguel, her fingers knotted in the emergency blanket like a lifeline. Jasmine hit play on her phone. Emily's tearful voice filled the car. Lexi said, "She said if I didn't do it, she'd make sure I never got into college. She knows people on the school board."
Her father listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with each word. When the recording ended, the silence stretched taut enough to snap.
"Emily." The chief's voice was softer than Jasmine had ever heard it. "Look at me." The freshman lifted her tear-streaked face. "Did Lexi Reynolds explicitly tell you to set that mascot on fire?"
A nod.
"And did she provide the lighter?"
Another nod.
Jasmine's father closed his eyes for a brief moment, then reached for his radio. "Dispatch, I need units to locate and detain Alexis Reynolds for questioning. Possible arson and coercion of a minor." Emily gasped. "Am I in trouble?" "Not if you're willing to testify." He opened the car door, letting in a rush of damp night air. "Miguel, take Emily inside to Officer Gutierrez. Tell her I said to take their formal statements." As they scrambled out, Jasmine moved to follow, but her father's hand on her arm stopped her. "Not you." The door closed with a solid thunk, sealing them in sudden silence. Outside, the rain picked up, tapping against the windshield like impatient fingers. Her father turned the key just enough to power the heat. "You recorded that without her consent." Jasmine stiffened. "It's a one-party state." "Technically." He rubbed his temples. "But this isn't some parking ticket dispute, Jasmine. This is serious." "So am I." For the first time that night, her voice cracked. All the adrenaline, the fear, the anger came rushing up like bile. "You weren't there, Dad. You didn't see how she looked at Emily while that thing burned. Like it was all some game." Her father studied her for a long moment, then surprised her by pulling her into a rough hug. His uniform smelled of smoke and the peppermint gum he always chewed on patrol. "I'm proud of you," he murmured into her hair. "But from here on out, let the professionals handle it, okay?" Jasmine wanted to believe it was that simple, that truth and justice would prevail just because they had evidence now. But as she watched through the rain-streaked window while officers led Lexi to a separate squad car, her perfect hair still intact, her expression more annoyed than afraid, she knew better. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The news vans arrived by morning. Jasmine watched from her bedroom window as reporters clustered on the school lawn, their cameras trained on the scorched gym doors. The banner headline on her phone read, "Asterisk, Pep Rally Turns Dangerous. Police question Ridgewood High students following fire." Asterisk.
No mention of Lexi by name.
Not yet. Her phone buzzed with Miguel's latest text. Asterisk. Emily's parents lawyered up. She might not testify after all. Asterisk. Jasmine's stomach dropped. Without Emily, it was her word against Lexi's. And Lexi had a family name, connections, money, all the things that made truth irrelevant. Downstairs, her father argued with someone on the phone, his voice carrying up through the floorboards. "No, I don't care who her uncle is." "Yes, I'm aware of the donation records." Jasmine dressed mechanically. Black jeans, boots, the navy sweater again. Armor for whatever today would bring. The kitchen smelled of burnt toast and strong coffee. Her father stood at the counter, still in uniform though he should have been off shift hours ago. Dark stubble shadowed his jaw. "They're releasing her," he said without preamble. "Insufficient evidence." Jasmine's fingers tightened around her backpack straps. "Emily recanted?" "Not exactly." He sighed. Her parents are concerned about the legal ramifications for their daughter, especially since the lighter only has Emily's prints. Of course, Lexi would have been careful not to touch it. Jasmine poured herself coffee she didn't want, the bitter scent making her nose wrinkle. So that's it? She walks away. For now. Her father caught her wrist as she moved past. But we're not done. These things take time, Jasmine. Building a case requires evidence. I know. She pulled free gently. I have to get to school. The walk felt longer than usual, the autumn air crisp with the promise of winter. Every passing car seemed to slow just enough to make her shoulders tense. Ridgewood High loomed ahead, its usual bustling energy replaced by a strange, watchful quiet. Students clustered in tight groups, their conversations hushing as Jasmine approached. The burned-out shell of the Wildcat mascot had been removed, leaving only a darkened patch of asphalt where it once stood. Miguel waited by their usual spot, his face grim. You seen the news? Jasmine shook her head. He pulled up a video on his phone. There, in perfect HD, was Lexi's tearful interview outside the police station last night. Just grateful no one was seriously hurt, she sniffed, her blue eyes magnified by artfully smudged mascara. But we really need to examine why some students feel so alienated they'd resort to violence. The camera panned to show Emily being led into the station by her parents, their faces hidden under coats. The cheerin below read, Asterisk, troubled student questioned in school fire incident. Asterisk. Jasmine's vision swam with rage. That manipulative bitch. Yeah. Miguel pocketed his phone. And she's not done.
As if summoned, Lexi appeared at the end of the hallway, surrounded by her newly emboldened clique.
She met Jasmine's gaze across the crowded hall and smiled. Slow, vicious, and full of promise. Then she mouthed two words. Asterisk, game on. Asterisk. The school board meeting notice went up on the Ridgewood High website at precisely 3:15 p.m. that afternoon. A special session to discuss recent disciplinary concerns had been called for Thursday evening, just 48 hours away. The listed attendees included Lexi's uncle, a prominent school board member, and the Reynolds' personal attorney. Jasmine read the announcement on her phone while sitting in the back of her father's squad car, her knees pulled up to her chest. The leather seat smelled faintly of disinfectant and the peppermint candies the chief kept in the console. They're moving fast, her father observed from the driver's seat, his fingers drumming an uneven rhythm on the steering wheel. Jasmine scrolled through the attached documents. Buried in the fine print was a motion to review the school's disciplinary procedures regarding unsubstantiated accusations. A direct attack on her credibility. She locked her phone with a decisive click. They're scared. Her father's eyebrows lifted. Think about it, Jasmine continued, the pieces clicking together in her mind. Lexi's family wouldn't go nuclear like this unless they were worried something might actually stick. Emily's testimony could ruin them.
The chief sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose.
Problem is, without Emily willing to go on record. Jasmine's phone buzzed. Another anonymous text. Asterisk, they paid her family off. $50K donation to Emily's mom's medical fund. Asterisk. She showed her father the message. His jaw tightened. That's witness tampering, he growled. Prove it. Jasmine echoed Lexi's favorite phrase, the words bitter on her tongue. The car fell silent except for the distant chatter of police radios. Outside, the first leaves of autumn skittered across the parking lot asphalt, pushed by a wind that smelled of coming rain. Her father turned the key in the ignition. We'll subpoena bank records. And by the time that goes through? Jasmine stared out at the school, where Lexi no doubt held court, victorious. The board will have already voted to sweep everything under the rug.
The engine rumbled to life.
Then we find another way.
Miguel was waiting on Jasmine's porch when they got home, his hood pulled up against the drizzle that had started again. His usual messy curls were hidden, making his face look sharper, older. I found something, he said by way of greeting, following her inside. The Carter house smelled of lemon polish and the lingering scent of her father's coffee. Jasmine led Miguel to the kitchen, where he pulled a thumb drive from his pocket and plugged it into her laptop. Security footage from the art wing, he explained as files loaded. The cameras weren't broken like Greeley claimed.
just restricted access. Jasmine leaned closer. How'd you get this? Miguel's smile didn't reach his eyes. Let's just say the IT guy really hates Lexi's crew after they vandalized his daughter's science project last year. The footage was grainy but clear enough. There, time-stamped the morning of the locker vandalism, was Haley and two other girls peeling Jasmine's mural off with what looked like palette knives. The angle even caught Haley pocketing the family photo that had been taped inside. Jasmine's breath caught. This proves they planned it all, Miguel finished. But watch this. He fast-forwarded to later that afternoon. The camera showed Lexi arriving alone after school hours, slipping something under the art teacher's door. A few minutes later, the same teacher emerged, looked around furtively, then removed the spray-painted locker door entirely. Jasmine's stomach dropped. She's blackmailing faculty now? Or paying them off? Miguel ejected the drive. Either way, we've got leverage. The back door opened, letting in a gust of damp air. Jasmine's father entered, still in uniform, his hat dripping rainwater. He took one look at their faces and sighed. What now? The plan came together in fits and starts over microwaved leftovers and too strong coffee. Jasmine's father made calls while Miguel dug deeper into the school's security logs. Jasmine herself worked the phone, reaching out to every student who'd slipped her a note, every kid who'd ever been on Lexi's hit list. By midnight they had 1. 3 sworn affidavits from students who'd witnessed Lexi's bullying firsthand. 2. The IT guy's testimony about the malfunctioning cameras. 3. A damning paper trail of donations from the Reynolds family to school board members. But the piece de resistance came at 12:37 a.m. when Emily Chen's older sister messaged Jasmine a single audio file. Just press play, the text read. Jasmine did. Lexi's voice filled the kitchen, crystal clear. Asterisk. Stupid fire was your idea. If you breathe a word about that lighter, I'll make sure your mom loses her disability payments. My uncle owns half the review board. Asterisk. The recording cut off abruptly. Miguel whistled low. That's not just bullying. That's blackmail. Jasmine's father reached for his duty belt. I'm calling the DA. As he stepped into the other room, Jasmine stared at the audio waveform on her screen, the visible proof that Lexi's reign of terror might finally meet its match. But one question nagged at her. Why would Emily's family share this now, after taking the payoff? Her phone buzzed with the answer. Asterisk. They came after my little sister today. Nobody touches my family. Asterisk. Attached was a photo of Emily's bruised wrist, fingerprint-shaped marks circling the pale skin like a shackle. Jasmine's vision went red at the edges. Game on indeed. The school board meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. in the Ridgewood High Auditorium, the same room where, just 2 months prior, Lexi had been crowned homecoming queen. The irony wasn't lost on Jasmine as she adjusted the lapel mic her father had insisted she wear, the tiny device hidden beneath her navy blazer. You sure about this? Miguel asked for the third time as they lingered in the nearly empty parking lot. The sun had just begun its descent, painting the asphalt in long orange shadows. Jasmine checked her phone again. No new messages from Emily or her sister. The audio file burned in her pocket like a live grenade. We don't have a choice. Inside, the auditorium hummed with uneasy energy. Every seat was filled. Students crammed shoulder to shoulder in the back rows, parents and teachers occupying the middle, and at the front, behind a long table draped in blue cloth, sat the school board members. Lexi's uncle occupied the center seat, his salt and pepper hair and tailored suit making him look more like a corporate CEO than an elected official. Jasmine spotted Lexi immediately. She sat in the front row beside her parents, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her posture radiating bored indifference. Only the rhythmic tapping of her manicured nails against the armrest betrayed any tension. The chief met them at the doors, his uniform hat tucked under one arm. "Dia's here," he murmured, nodding toward a severe-looking woman in a gray pantsuit reviewing documents near the stage. "She's ready to move as soon as we present the evidence." Miguel exhaled sharply. This is really happening. Before Jasmine could respond, Vice Principal Greeley spotted them and hurried over, his tie slightly askew. "Jasmine, Chief, perhaps we should discuss this matter privately before." "No." Jasmine's father cut him off with a look. "We'll take our seats now." The walk down the center aisle felt like moving through a dream. Conversations hushed as they passed, dozens of eyes tracking their progress. Jasmine kept her gaze fixed straight ahead, her fingers brushing the USB drive in her pocket, the one containing every piece of damning evidence they'd collected. The board chair called the meeting to order with a sharp rap of her gavel. Tonight we'll be discussing recent disciplinary concerns at Ridgewood High, particularly regarding... Lexi's uncle cleared his throat loudly. Perhaps we should first address the unsubstantiated accusations being leveled against my niece by certain attention-seeking students. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Jasmine's father stood. With all due respect, Mr. Reynolds, I believe you'll want to hear what we have to say before making statements like that. The DA chose that moment to step forward, her heels clicking against the stage. As senior prosecutor for the county, I must inform the board that we're investigating serious allegations of blackmail, witness tampering, and contributing to the delinquency of a minor. She paused meaningfully, some of which may involve district employees. The room erupted. Lexi's father shot to his feet, his face mottled red. This is outrageous. My daughter has been the victim of... Your daughter, the DA interrupted coolly, is on this recording. With a nod from Jasmine's father, the audio file played through the auditorium speakers, Lexi's voice crisp and unmistakable. Asterisk, stupid fire was your idea. If you breathe a word about that lighter, I'll make sure your mom loses her disability payments. Asterisk. The change in the room was instantaneous. Teachers gasped. Students leaned forward in their seats. And Lexi went very, very still. Her uncle tried to regain control. This is clearly doctored. There's no... We have security footage as well, the chief said, nodding to Miguel, who hurried to plug in the thumb drive. The grainy video played on the projection screen, Haley vandalizing Jasmine's locker, Lexi bribing the art teacher, Emily being cornered near the burned mascot. Each clip more damning than the last. By the time it finished, even Lexi's most loyal followers were staring at her with something like fear. The board chair looked ill. Mr. Reynolds, I think it's best if you recuse yourself from these proceedings. Lexi's uncle opened his mouth to protest, but the DA cut him off. Actually, we'll need to question you as well regarding certain financial transactions with other board members. That's when the screaming started. Lexi launched herself from her seat, her perfect facade crumbling into something raw and ugly. This is all her fault. She pointed a shaking finger at Jasmine. She came here thinking she could take what's mine. The auditorium fell silent. Jasmine stood slowly, her pulse roaring in her ears. I didn't take anything, Lexi. You just finally got caught. For one endless second, they stared at each other across the stunned crowd, the queen and the girl who'd toppled her reign. Then Lexi did something no one expected. She lunged. Chaos erupted as Lexi clawed her way toward Jasmine, her designer heels abandoned, her face twisted in rage. Teachers and parents scrambled to intervene, but it was Jasmine's father who caught Lexi mid-leap, his police training allowing him to subdue her with minimal force. Alexis Reynolds, he said loud enough for everyone to hear, you're under arrest. The words hung in the air like a death knell. As her father led a sobbing Lexi away, Jasmine became aware of dozens of eyes on her. Not with pity or fear now, but something closer to awe. Miguel bumped her shoulder. Well, that happened. Jasmine exhaled shakily, watching as the DA began collecting statements from students who suddenly found their courage. Yeah, she said softly. It did. The police station was unusually quiet for a Friday night. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Jasmine sat on a hard plastic chair outside her father's office, picking at a loose thread on her sleeve. The scent of stale coffee and industrial cleaner clung to the air. Miguel slumped beside her, his sneakers squeaking against the linoleum as he fidgeted. How long have we been here? Jasmine checked her phone. 2 hours, 17 minutes. Down the hall, the occasional burst of static from dispatch radios punctuated the murmur of voices behind closed doors. Lexi had been in interrogation room 3 since they'd brought her in, her parents and their high-priced lawyer arguing with the DA at every turn. The chief's office door opened, and Officer Gutierrez stepped out, her dark braid swinging as she motioned to Jasmine. She's asking for you. Miguel tensed. Who? Emily Chen. Gutierrez's expression softened. She's ready to give her official statement. Wants Jasmine there when she does. The interview room was smaller than Jasmine expected. The walls a dull beige that made the space feel even more claustrophobic. Emily sat hunched at the table, her slight frame nearly swallowed by an oversized Ridgewood High sweatshirt. A bandage peeked out from the cuff at her wrist. She looked up when Jasmine entered, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. They said you had the recording. Jasmine took the seat beside her. I do. Emily swallowed hard. Play it. The audio filled the cramped room. Lexi's threats, Emily's frightened whimpers, the unmistakable sound of a struggle. When it finished, Emily sat very still for a long moment before squaring her shoulders. I'll testify. Gutierrez leaned forward. You understand this means. I know what it means. Emily's voice was steadier than Jasmine had ever heard it. But I'm done being scared. As the officer began taking Emily's formal statement, Jasmine slipped out into the hall where her father waited, his arms crossed over his chest. Well, he asked quietly. Jasmine exhaled. She's doing it. The chief nodded, his expression unreadable. The DA's preparing charges. Coercion, witness intimidation, contributing to the delinquency of a minor. Maybe more if we can prove she was behind the fire. Down the hall, a door slammed. Lexi's lawyer stormed out of interrogation room 3, his expensive shoes clicking against the floor as he approached. Chief Carter. The man's smile didn't reach his cold eyes. My client is prepared to accept a plea deal. Community service, probation. Your client, Jasmine's father interrupted, will be charged as an adult for felony intimidation of a witness. Take it up with the DA. The lawyer's smile vanished. You're making a mistake. No. Jasmine spoke before she could stop herself. The mistake was thinking you could bully everyone into silence. The man looked her up and down like she was something unpleasant on the bottom of his shoe before turning on his heel and striding away. Her father sighed. You shouldn't have. I know. Jasmine watched the lawyer disappear around the corner. But someone needed to say it. The news broke before sunrise. By the time Jasmine dragged herself out of bed, her phone was blowing up with notifications. Local headlines screamed, Ridgewood High bullying scandal ends in arrest, and asterisk, police chief's daughter exposes systemic harassment. Asterisk. Miguel's text came through as she was brushing her teeth. Turn on Channel 7. The TV in the kitchen showed Lexi being led from the police station in the pre-dawn light, her designer clothes rumpled, her face hidden beneath a jacket held up by her father. Reporters shouted questions while the DA gave a brief statement about justice being served. Jasmine's father set a cup of coffee in front of her. You okay? She turned the mug in her hands, watching the steam curl toward the ceiling. I don't know. Because this wasn't the clean victory she'd imagined. There were still hearings ahead, court dates, appeals. Lexi's family had money and connections that could drag this out for years. But Emily had testified. That counted for something. Ridgewood High was eerily quiet when Jasmine arrived Monday morning. The usual chatter in the halls was subdued, students moving through the corridors like they weren't sure what came next. Lexi's locker stood empty, its combination lock removed, the door slightly ajar. Someone had taped a single sheet of notebook paper to the front with the words, "No bullies allowed," scrawled in messy handwriting. Miguel fell into step beside her. Heard anything from Haley's crew? Jasmine shook her head. They've been awfully quiet. Too quiet, she thought. Lexi might be gone, but the system that enabled her was still very much intact. As they turned the corner toward homeroom, Jasmine noticed a group of underclassmen clustered around her locker. No, not her locker. A brand new one installed right beside it, its surface freshly painted with. Her breath caught. The phoenix had returned, more vibrant than before, its golden wings now spanning both lockers. Beneath it, in careful script, someone had added, asterisk still here. Still rising. Asterisk. Miguel grinned. Looks like you started something. Jasmine reached out, tracing the edge of a fiery wing. Maybe one person couldn't change an entire system overnight, but they could light the spark. And sometimes that was enough. The first snow of winter dusted Ridgewood High's campus like powdered sugar, muting the usual sounds of slamming lockers and shouted conversations. Jasmine breathed in the crisp air as she walked through the front gates, her boots leaving dark prints on the pristine white sidewalk. 3 weeks had passed since Lexi's arrest, and the school still felt off balance, like a spinning top wobbling before finding its new rhythm. Miguel waited by their lockers, his nose buried in a battered copy of The Art of War. Steam curled from the travel mug in his free hand. "You're late." Jasmine checked her phone. "By 2 minutes. Late for you." He snapped the book shut and nodded toward the principal's office. "Greeley's been asking for you." The vice principal's office smelled of pine-scented disinfectant and the peppermints he kept in a glass jar on his desk. Greeley himself looked like he hadn't slept in days, his usually crisp dress shirt wrinkled, his tie loose around his neck. "Jasmine." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Please." She remained standing. "What's this about?" Greeley sighed and pushed a sheet of paper across the desk. It was a printed email from the school district superintendent. Subject line: Mandatory Anti-Bullying Initiatives. Immediate Implementation. "Starting next month," Greeley said, rubbing his temples, "all faculty will undergo harassment identification training. We're reinstating the peer mediation program. And..." He hesitated. "The school board approved your proposal for an anonymous reporting system." Jasmine blinked. "They did. With some modifications." Greeley tapped the paper. "But yes, your incident brought certain systemic failures to light." The way he said "incident" made it sound like a minor fender bender rather than months of targeted harassment. Jasmine bit back her first 3 responses and settled for, "That's a start." Greeley studied her for a long moment. "You know this won't fix everything overnight." "No," she agreed. "But it's better than sweeping it under the rug." Outside, the first period bell rang, muffled by the falling snow. The changes became visible faster than Jasmine expected. By midweek, brightly colored posters announcing the new Speak Up initiative appeared in every hallway. The counseling office extended its hours. Even the security guards seemed more attentive, their usual bored expressions replaced with something approaching vigilance. But the real shift was in the student body. Where once kids had averted their eyes when passing Jasmine in the halls, now they nodded, smiled, sometimes even stopped to talk. A sophomore girl with braces asked her advice on dealing with a nasty rumor. A lanky basketball player thanked her for taking out the trash. It should have felt like victory. So why did it leave such a bitter taste? Miguel voiced the thought over lunch in the nearly empty art room. Their new hideout since the cafeteria still felt too exposed. "They're treating you like some kind of superhero," he said around a mouthful of peanut butter sandwich. "Like you single-handedly fixed Ridgewood's bullying problem." Jasmine stirred her chocolate pudding into an unappetizing brown swirl. "I didn't." "Exactly." Miguel wiped his hands on his jeans. "Lexi's gone, but half her minions are still here. The teachers still play favorites. The system's still broken." Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the courtyard in pristine white. Jasmine thought of Emily Chen, who'd transferred to a private school last week. Of the dozen other kids who'd slip her notes but still jumped at loud noises in the hallway. "Maybe we can't fix the whole system," she said slowly. "But we can make it harder for the next Lexi." Miguel raised an eyebrow. "How?" Jasmine pulled out her phone and opened the draft she'd been working on for days. A detailed guide on documenting harassment, complete with templates for formal complaints and lists of relevant state laws. "We arm people," she said, turning the screen toward him, "with knowledge." The email blast went out Friday afternoon to every student who'd ever reached out to Jasmine, plus anyone else who expressed interest. By Saturday morning, the guide had been shared over 200 times on social media. By Sunday, the local news picked it up. Monday brought another surprise. Jasmine was halfway to her locker when she noticed the crowd gathered near the main office. At first, she assumed it was another fight or announcement. Then she saw the camera crew. Channel 7's morning reporter, a sharp-eyed woman in a burgundy blazer, stood interviewing a petite freshman girl Jasmine recognized from algebra. The girl spoke animatedly, gesturing to the new Speak Up posters while the reporter nodded along. Miguel materialized at her elbow. "Guess word got out." Jasmine's stomach lurched. "This isn't what I wanted." "Too late now." He nudged her forward. "Go on. They're waiting for you." The reporter spotted Jasmine before she could escape. The young woman who started it all.
Suddenly, a microphone was thrust in her face. Bright lights blinded her. The reporter's perfume, something floral and overpowering, filled her nostrils. "Jasmine Carter," the woman said with practiced warmth, "how does it feel to know your courage inspired real change at Ridgewood High?" Jasmine's mouth went dry. This wasn't about courage. This was about survival. About refusing to let some rich bully grind her into dust. But the camera was rolling. Dozens of expectant faces watched her. So she took a deep breath and told the truth. "It shouldn't have taken this much," she said quietly. "No one should have to call their police chief father just to feel safe at school." The reporter blinked, clearly expecting a more polished soundbite. "But surely you're proud of..." "Proud?" Jasmine shook her head. "I'm tired. And angry. And really hoping the adults in charge will actually do their jobs now so no one else has to go through this." An awkward silence fell. The cameraman lowered his equipment slightly. Then, from the back of the crowd, someone started clapping. Slowly at first, then louder, spreading through the gathered students until the entire hallway echoed with applause. The reporter recovered quickly, launching into a spiel about youth activism, as the camera panned across cheering faces. Jasmine slipped away in the commotion, her ears burning. Miguel caught up with her at the water fountain. "Well, that was unexpected." She drank deeply, trying to steady her racing heart. "They're missing the point." "Or," Miguel countered gently, "they're finally starting to get it." The letter arrived Wednesday. Thick ivory paper, embossed letterhead, addressed to Jasmine in careful calligraphy. Inside, an invitation to speak at the State Education Summit next month about student-led reform. Her father whistled low when she showed him. "This is big, superstar." Jasmine traced the gold-printed border. "I don't want to be some poster child." "You won't be." He took the invitation and set it carefully on the counter. "You'll be the girl who tells them exactly where they failed. And if they're smart, they'll listen." That night, Jasmine lay awake staring at the ceiling, the invitation propped on her nightstand. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the tree branches against her window. Somewhere out there, Lexi was probably plotting her next move. The system was still broken. The fight was far from over. But for the first time in months, Jasmine felt something like hope. She reached for her phone and typed a quick message to Miguel. "Let's make a list of demands for that summit." His reply came instantly. "Already started." Jasmine smiled into the dark. The State Education Summit was held in the Capitol Building's Grand Ballroom, a cavernous space with vaulted ceilings and gilded moldings that made Jasmine's boots echo as she approached the podium. Rows of legislators, school administrators, and reporters watched her expectantly, their name tags glinting under the chandeliers. Her father stood near the back in full dress uniform, his posture rigid with barely contained pride. Miguel had scored a press pass through the art club and now lurked near the media risers, giving her an exaggerated thumbs up. Jasmine adjusted the microphone, her notes trembling slightly in her hands. The 10-page speech she'd prepared, full of statistics and policy recommendations, suddenly felt woefully inadequate. So she set it aside. "My name is Jasmine Carter," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the silent room. "3 months ago, I transferred to Ridgewood High and became the target of systematic bullying. Not the harmless teasing people like to dismiss, real, sustained harassment that adults witnessed and ignored." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone coughed. Jasmine continued. "I was lucky. I had resources most kids don't. A parent in law enforcement, media attention, a platform. But what about the students who don't?" She gestured to the projection screen behind her, where Miguel's art displayed a mosaic of anonymous notes from bullied kids across the state. These are their stories. And they deserve more than lip service and poster campaigns. For the next 20 minutes, she dismantled every excuse she'd heard since this began. The kids will be kids mentality, the fear of retaliation, the willful blindness toward privileged students. She named names when necessary, citing specific instances where teachers and administrators had failed. The room grew increasingly tense. A school board member in the front row turned an alarming shade of red. Then Jasmine pulled out the thick folder from her backpack, copies of her anti-bullying guide, now expanded with input from students across 5 school districts. "Real solutions exist.
Enforcing existing policies. Anonymous reporting with actual follow-through. Consequences for bystander adults as well as bullies. She placed the stack on the podium's edge. I brought enough for everyone. The silence that followed was absolute. Then, from the back of the room, someone stood and began clapping. Then another. And another. Soon the entire ballroom was on its feet. Even the red-faced board member, though his applause looked more like a nervous twitch. Jasmine exhaled shakily, her gaze finding her father's tear-bright eyes in the crowd. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't over. But it was a start. Epilogue. The email from Emily Chan arrived on the last day of school, just as Jasmine was cleaning out her locker. St. Mary's isn't so bad, it read. Asterisk, they actually suspend bullies here. P.S. Lexi got expelled from boarding school last week. Karma's a bitch. Asterisk. Jasmine smiled and tucked the note into her pocket alongside the others. The growing collection of messages from kids who'd read her guide, attended her workshops, found their voices. Miguel slammed his locker shut beside her. Ready to blow this popsicle stand? Outside, summer sunlight gilded the parking lot asphalt. Somewhere beyond Ridgewood's borders, Lexi was probably scheming her next move. New bullies would rise to take her place. The fight would never truly be over. But as Jasmine stepped into the warm June air, her father waiting by the squad car with 2 melting popsicles, she realized something important. She wasn't afraid anymore. And that was everything.